sunny day out today in Washington State, and I appreciate you coming back and checking out what I'm making today on my YouTube channel. It's going to be cinnamon rolls. Now this is a very popular recipe that a lot of people probably have used. I have a couple tips and twists in this recipe. Also, this is a kind of a time-consuming recipe. It takes about an hour to raise for the actual dough, and then later on for the actual cinnamon rolls to raise before baking. So just to let you know, when you make these, take some time out and follow the recipe. Now without further ado, let's get baking. Start to make the dough. There's 3 different sections of this recipe today. There's the actual dough and raising that. Then there's going to be rolling out of the dough and putting the filling in. And then the third, which is optional, is going to be the cream cheese frosting. I will show you guys how to make it, but if you decide to put it on your topping of your cinnamon rolls, that's up to you. So let's start with the dough. So here we're going to be using 1 package of rapid rise, or the kind of yeast that is quick, so you can get your dough raising quicker in the soft warm area. So we're going to put that right into our stand mixer, and today we're going to be using the dough hook, and the dough hook is what's going to be able to mix that dough so we don't have to do it by hand. So we're going to add that right in. The next thing we're going to be adding is going to be the butter. It's going to be the oil that we're going to be using in this recipe. So let's take our butter, and we're going to be using 2 tablespoons. And into the bowl. Now the yeast needs to grow. So to grow in its environment, it's going to need warm milk and warm water. Also, to feed the yeast, to have it grow, it needs to have sugar. So we're going to be putting in 2 tablespoons of sugar to feed the yeast to make it bloom. So that's what we have in the bowl so far. Now we have a thermometer. This is a digital thermometer. You can buy this at any of your houseware stores, or even online at Amazon. And we're going to be warming our milk in the microwave, but we want to have the temperature of our milk to be 110 to 115 degrees. So we're going to be using 1 cup of that. So here we have our measuring at 110, and that was 1 minute and 11 seconds in the microwave. So let's add that to our mixture. Now we're going to go to the tap and do the same thing with 1 cup of water at the same temperature. Okay, the water looks good. Let's dump it in. Okay, so let's look into here. We have the bowl. We can see the yeast is starting to bubble up, and that's what's called blooming. So it's actually eating the, if you mind, would be calling it that. It's actually eating the sugar and all the stuff, and you can see it pop up. So now we're going to set the timer for 5 minutes. And we're going to let it bloom. I'll see you then. Okay, it's been 5 minutes. We can see the yeast has bloomed, and now we're going to add the flour. I have pre-sifted and pre-measured 4 cups of bread flour into this bowl for time's sake. So we're going to add that on medium speed of our stand mixer gradually, and then the dough is going to end up being not sticky, but very soft and good texture. So let's add it. But first, we lift up the bowl. In the recipe, I put 4 to 4.5 cups of flour, depending upon the humidity outside and the way that your stand mixer works. So if we looked in there, it looks a little moist yet, so I'm going to be adding another half cup. Perfect. So that dough looks perfect. Let's take the dough hook out, get it off there. That looks really good. See the consistency in there? Not sticky, but soft, real nice. Okay, so now we're going to be adding a little bit of oil in there so that when the bread raises, it doesn't stick to the side. And there we have our dough. Now, if you remember in the earlier episode, or if you watched my bread episode, my tip for keeping the air and nice warmth into there is using a shower cap. You can buy these at the dollar store. And what I do is I put it over the top like this. Instead of using saran wrap, cover all the area there. And then as it raises, then the moisture keeps inside. So now this needs to raise for 1 hour in a warm place. It's been an hour. Let's take off the shower cap and see what it looks like. Yep, it's doubled in size, and that's exactly what we want. So now we're going to take our mixture. Look how fluffy that is. Real good, nice and moist. And we're going to take it and put it onto a floured board and roll it out. Good. Now we have our standard wooden rolling pin. You can use a bottle if you don't have one, or you can use a real expensive. They have the really nice marble ones. But we're going to flour our rolling pin so the dough doesn't stick, and we're going to roll it out. Okay, the size we want to have that we're going to be rolling our dough out is a 9 by 13 pan. We're going to make it the size of this. So we're going to have a rectangle of 9 by 13. So we'll start rolling and then we'll measure. Yep, that looks good. Okay, so now we're going to put the filling in. And the recipe calls for our filling, we're going to be using 1 full half cup of softened butter. And we're going to take that out of the wrapper. And we're going to take it and smooth it into our dough. Some people like to melt it. I find it's easier this way to use it. I can control the butter better. Let's be sure and get the sides. So break that off. Smooth that in with your hands. And we're going to use the full half a cup. Okay, and there we have that. Now I'll wipe my hands and we'll get our brown sugar. Here we have the brown sugar. Now we're going to use 1 cup, our dry measuring cup, and we're going to use, make sure it's packed in. So 1 cup of packed brown sugar. Nice and packed in. Now we're going to take that. We're going to put that on top of our mixture and we're going to smooth it around. Make sure we get all the sides. Okay, that looks good. Now our last ingredient is cinnamon. Now the cinnamon that I'm going to be using, I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to sprinkle it out onto our dough here, and as long as it covers all the area, it's basic normal cinnamon. Let's spread it out and cover it. It's probably, if you wanted to measure that out, it's probably 2 tablespoons. Okay, and there we have it. Now the fun part. We're going to be rolling this up like a jelly roll. We're going to start with one end, and we're going to continue to roll and keep rolling. Rolling and rolling till we come to the bottom. Now see in there how that we have a slip there? we want to take that and crimp it with our hands. Crimp it so that all the filling will not fall out. And the bottom of our crimping of our jelly roll, this will be the bottom. Okay, does everyone understand it? This is the bottom. So we're going to flip it over. And now we have the top. Okay, so here's the top of our cinnamon rolls. Has everybody got that? That looks good. Okay, so now the cutting process. We have our 9x13 pan that I'm going to spray with non-stick spray to make sure that the cinnamon rolls do not stick. We're going to be using this utensil now called a pastry scraper, and we're going to be using that to cut our cinnamon rolls. So the trick with this is we're going to be cutting it in half. Okay? And then we're going to cut it in half again. So we have 4 sections. Now it depends on if you like your cinnamon rolls very thick or very thin. And that will be how you find out what the yield of your cinnamon rolls will be with this recipe. I am going to cut mine 3 times. So 1, 2. I'm going to cut it twice so that I have 3 pieces. Hey, it's Leslie's Baking Basics. Okay, into the pan. What does that look like? Beautiful. Okay. So there we have our 3. Let's do that again. So I yielded 12 cinnamon rolls here. And so now for the second proofing, we're going to be covering this with saran wrap and putting it back in our warm oven or our warm space. And we're going to be proofing that for another 30 minutes. And then we will take and proceed from there. Okay, they've doubled in size. Let's take the saran wrap off. Woo! Those are big. They look good. Okay, so now look at that fatty. Look at that nice dough. Springs back, beautiful. Okay, so the one last thing we're going to do before we put them in the oven, we're going to preheat our oven. Depending upon your oven, I'm going to preheat mine at 400 degrees, and we're going to bake these for 30 minutes. You can add sugar on top if you'd like. I'm going to put a couple more pads of butter on there, and then we're going to bake it. I just took them out of the oven. How do they look? What do you think they look like? I think they look good. We're going to let them cool to the side here while we make the cream cheese frosting. So let's get the ingredients for that. Now we're going to make the cream cheese frosting. This is optional, but I'd like to show you how to do it, and then that way you can put it on your cinnamon rolls if you like. So the first ingredient in this recipe is going to call for 1/4 cup of cream cheese. I'm going to use the spoon to get it packed in there, and then the back of the spoon to level it off. This needs to be softened. Also, I'm going to be using butter in this recipe, and it needs to be softened also. So here we have our 1/4 cup. Put it into the bowl. Okay, and we'll get our spoonula, and we'll take off the excess of the spoon. Okay, into the bowl. Now we're going to be using 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And into the bowl. Next ingredient is 1/2 cup of butter. So we're going to be using our leftover butter that we have here. And we saved that from the last of the recipe. And the most important ingredient we're going to be using is confectioner's sugar or powdered sugar. And we're going to be using 1.5 cups. This is going to be kind of messy, but you can figure out how it works in your kitchen. There we have our 1, And then we know that a half a cup we can use in our 1 cup. And there we have half of a cup. We need to use our beaters today. We're going to be using the hand mixer. Please start it out on low so the powdered sugar doesn't fly everywhere. And let's start to mix. We'll scrape down the sides to make sure we get all the powdered sugar in here. But be sure to keep the beaters on low. And there we have our cream cheese frosting. So now we're going to let these cinnamon rolls cool and we'll test them out. There, all done. I frosted one of the cinnamon rolls, so now we're going to try it. Let's take a look at the picture here. It's nice and brown with a good dollop of cream cheese. I don't know if I can fit all of my mouth. Oh, it's warm. It's so delicious, I can't even tell you. Let's look inside. It's melty. I think this is the best episode I've ever done. Thank you so much. I hope you try it. Well, that's a wrap. That was season 2, episode 9. Basic cinnamon rolls. Please comment below on how yours turned out and post a picture of it on my Facebook page. I'd love to see yours. Next episode is going to be 10 of season 2, so I have a surprise as usual. And I hope that everyone enjoys this recipe and follows me, and please subscribe. Now, from my kitchen to yours, thank you so much.